Walt Minnick,
Here.
Andy Bailey,
Here.
Jeff Chenoweth,
Here.
Chad Colby.
Here.
And then staff members Liz Stitzel and Kat Bell are present, as well as Attorney Jay Moore.
Okay, next we have the disposition of the minutes. Everybody had a chance to review them. Any changes or amendments? There are none. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
All right. Jeff was the second. We'll do roll call since we have some people that may abstain, so,
Jordan Brewer,
yes.
Grant Muller,
Yes.
Dan Sheets,
Yes.
Walt Minnick,
Yes.
Andy Bailey,
Sustain.
Jeff Chenoweth,
Yes.
Chad Colby.
Yes.
I see nothing listed for old business, anything
That's
there?
correct.
Okay. So we'll move on to the public hearings. The first item we'll need to do is a motion for a waiver of the filing deadline for application CC-2024-00037. This is the petition of the Kirkland Youth Center Incorporated. So,
I move to waive the filing deadline.
I'll second.
okay. For this, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. 7-0. So with that, if you'll take us through that application, please, Liz.
Sure will. This is the application of the Kirkland Youth Center in Kirkland, Indiana. The request is to rezone land from the medium-density residential zoning district to the roadside business zoning district. So that's R3 to B3. The parcel in question is currently zoned R3. To the north, we have low-density residential, R2. And then on the other three sides, you've got medium-density residential, which is R3. So the site itself consists of two lots, 41 and 42. They're on the east side of North Main Street, otherwise known as Highway 421, between East Francis and East Stowers Streets in the town of Kirkland. The petitioner is requesting to rezone the two lots in order to construct and operate the Kirkland Youth Center on the site. The site's currently vacant. It belongs to the town of Kirkland. And the town of Kirkland did sign the rezoning application permitting the petitioner to file for this rezoning request. This site is the last two lots right inside the northern edge of the city limits, town limits for the town of Kirkland. I think it's noted in the detailed findings, but there was previously a house here that was in poor condition that the town of Kirkland tore down, which I believe was connected to how they came into ownership. So there's 5 criteria that the Area Plan Commission and then the Kirkland Town Board should pay reasonable regard to in the evaluation of the rezoning request. And before I get into these, I'll just briefly, because we have new members, remind you guys that when we hear a rezoning request, the Area Plan Commission is a recommending body, not a final decision-making body. So you, at the end of this, have 3 options. You can positively recommend, negatively recommend, or you can set a neutral recommendation. But in all cases, we certify that to Kirkland Town Board, who then makes the final decision, since a rezoning is a law change, so it falls under the legislative body's powers. So with that, the first item is the most recently adopted comprehensive plan. So the town of Kirkland future land use map in the 2012 Clinton County Comprehensive Plan does designate this for residential use. However, Kirkland has experienced substantial growth in both areas of residential and commercial and since the plan was written. The comprehensive plan states under land use that the community of Kirkland's future growth will be dependent on its location along transportation corridors and its close proximity to Indianapolis. It's also near Hamilton and Boone counties, which are 2 of the fastest growing counties in Indiana. Kirkland additionally is noted to have a low cost of living and low taxes, and given the anticipated growth, having a building that solely accommodates the youth of the community would appear to be a nice added attraction to coincide with the other growth areas. This is an extension directly of the business districts that are shown in the comprehensive plan and in the zoning maps along 421. It just moves them a bit more north. For those that have been on the board longer, a Dollar General previously rezoned to the south of this, and while there is residential zoning to the south, a substation actually occupies those lots, not a house. So it's kind of continuous with non-residential uses at this point in that area. The second item is current conditions and the character of structure and uses in each district. So the requested district, B3, roadside business, does seem fitting because the site is along 421, which is a minor arterial road, and sits at the and the site sits at the very edge of northern town limits. The 3 parcels to the south, immediately adjacent, as I mentioned, have a substation on them, which is a deterrent for residential development on this petition site. The best use for it may indeed be as a business. Directly to the south of the substation is the newly constructed Dollar General, and a youth center would appear to be a less intense business use than the Dollar General or the substation, and contain less disruptive activity for the residential districts that sit on the next roads behind. 3, the most desirable use for which the land in each district is adapted. So, as previously noted, the ground is zoned residential and formerly had a dwelling in really bad condition that was torn down. The youth center will be, again, a less intense business than nearby business uses with less activity and hours of operation that typically are during normal business hours. For the conservation of property values throughout the jurisdiction. So the new use will be building a new structure, which should have a positive effect on nearby values versus the previous house that was falling apart. The redevelopment, if rezoned, will be subject to a development plan that will come back through the Area Plan Commission to verify landscaping and sidewalks and other standards are adequately addressed. 5, responsible growth and development. So the youth program currently has to meet in 2 or 3 other locations around Kirkland. If a new structure is built, that can house all that activity in one place for an existing organization that has been incorporated since January of 2011 and provides faith-based programs for youth in the community. It would appear to be not only responsible growth and development, but a positive attraction for Kirkland and their increasing growth. Consequently, staff would recommend to favorably certify the rezoning application to the Kirkland Town Board. I would note we have not received any letters of objection or phone calls with concerns ahead of this hearing. So the staff report is based upon that premise.
Okay, thank you, Liz.
I have one minor correction. As attorney for Kirkland, I have knowledge of this, is that actually the house there was, the real estate, I believe, was bought by Bob Thorley. Mr. Thorley and his wife bore the cost of tearing it down. And then they then they gave the real estate to the town of Kirkland. And I just thought that Mr. and Mrs. Thorley should get the credit that they deserve for their community spirit.
And I apologize, not sure where the misunderstanding came in across to us, but thank you, it needed to come down.
Okay, very good, thank you. Is there anyone for the youth center here today that would like to speak? You don't have to, but the opportunity is yours.
I'll speak for them.
Give me a second, Walt. Anyone else here that would like to speak on the hearing?
I guess the only thing that
Oh.
I would say, Sherry's.
I need you to go to the microphone. It's on YouTube.
Sorry. I'm Sherry Stowers, and I'm on the board with the bridge. And I guess the thing that I would like to bring before you, she has already said that we have to meet in 2 or 3 other places. We have moved from time to time, but had a specific building that we could meet in whenever we needed to meet. It was our building. And then because of the sale of the building, lost that. So that is why we need a place to be. And we don't want to lose any of the momentum that we've had going with the kids. And it's tough to keep them interested in coming when you don't have a specific place to be and you're having to move from week to week or month to month. So that's it.
Walt?
Well, being a resident on the town council in Kirkland, they've been searching and looking at all kinds of observations of what to do, and they bounced around from this place to that place, trying to keep the kids to go and have them a place to come and have a good time and all that. So, the town council just said, hey, this is a great idea, and we blessed it, and I really think it's a thing to do for Kirkland.
Okay, thank you for that input. I'll open it up to board discussion, comments, thoughts.
Mr. Chairman, I move we send a favorable recommendation to the town of Kirkland for application 2024-037, docket 01-24, RZ.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Jordan Brewer,
Yes.
Grant Muller,
Yes.
Dan Sheets,
Yes.
Walt Minnick,
Yes,
Andy Bailey,
Yes.
Jeff Chenoweth,
Yes.
Chad Colby.
Yes.
All right, so 7-0. We will pull together paperwork and we'll contact Dan, the secretary, to sign that, and we'll get that certified. And not sure, Walt, when's your next meeting? Offhand, I don't know.
well, next Monday night.
Okay, we'll try to get something certified to you in there before your meeting on
Yeah.
Monday.
Okay, great. If you were here for that, you're free to leave if you don't want to stay.
Thanks, Bob.
Okay, we have 3 different applications, so we'll go through them obviously individually for Good Oil Company. Each one of them has a waiver deadline that we have to grant. So the first one is the application.
I think you could address all
All
three
three.
waivers at once.
All right, let's just do that. So we have a waiver for application 2024-00039, 40, and 41. So
Motion to grant the waiver.
I have
I'll second that.
a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, 7-0 to grant the 3 waivers. So let's just start with the first application, which is 39. It is the petition of Good Oil Company for the approval of a major subdivision.
Thank you. So yes, as you noted, for Good Oil Company, this is a primary plat request for a major subdivision. And this is for Banderas Point, which many of you that have been on the board will be familiar with because the planned unit development has already been through the board, and there's been some other hearings there earlier on. And for those of you on the BZA, you've seen it there as well. So you've got the planned unit development, and then to the north, you've got some roadside business. To the east, there's agricultural zoning. South is agricultural. To the west is a mix of agricultural and roadside business. There is a little bit of general business to the north as well. It's just kind of hard to see because it shows on the map as red next to the pink. The petition site itself is 62.7 acres. It's on the south of State Road 28 between I-65 and South 700 West in Section 16 of Washington Township. The site is mostly surrounded by farm ground. There is a gas station and a convenience store there on it. The site was, as mentioned, approved for rezoning to a planned unit development on May 2nd of 2023. And the application and docket number are noted in the staff report. That rezoning was the first step. Approving the subdivision and the final development plans are the final steps before construction can begin. In the case of a planned unit development, the application for rezoning is also the primary initial development plan. So both the Plan Commission and the county commissioners bought into a concept, and now this is the follow-through of that concept to actually get it ready to break ground and hardcore start building it out. So there's a picture on the second page of the proposed plat and the zoning map on the first page. And then just a picture from the road. I think everyone's pretty familiar with this site. It's just very central in our community with where people drive. So this petition site is in the Manford Sheets legal watershed. The request is for a primary plat, and this is actually going to be a phased major subdivision. So we anticipate that the secondary plats will not come in all at once, but rather in sections. And there will be a separate dedicated common area that'll probably get approved with that first or second phase, but will serve all the phases ultimately. The surveyor's office has stated that the drainage board has approved the request, and then additionally, Dan Sheets, county surveyor, did look over the draft covenants to verify that the maintenance agreements and those things were in order to his satisfaction. The health department has no objections to the request. It will be served by sanitary sewer. Todd Corey with the city of Frankfurt and then his sewer and water department heads came and they looked at the plans. They confirmed that the sewer and the water is placed, designed and sized properly for their requirements. Enforcement clauses in the covenants are included. There's some minor changes staff's still working with the developer on in terms of formatting the plat, But ultimately, and this will make sense as we get through this plat, through the staff report, staff would anticipate that before we get to the point of approving this, those will all be addressed. Those minor things do include some verification of setbacks, which I'll correct today, just shortly before the meeting. We did get a final update. We now do have a 20-foot setback throughout off Banderas Drive, so that's actually been addressed. And then we had some missing sidewalk and pedestrian connections that relate to Duke Energy's communication. We've now had some follow-up communication from Duke. I think we have a solution, but it's not yet reflected on the plat. That's just happened in the last few hours. So in terms of principles and standards of design, this is a little bit more complex than normally. Normally, when we do a minor subdivision, we just note the ones where there's issues. Because this is major and there's so much happening, I've actually noted every single point in the ordinance that has to be addressed, and then tried to make a brief note just to help you guys track what's going on. So first, the restrictive covenants that need to be properly prepared and legally sound. We have received restrictive covenants. Jay and I both went through them. We sent a set of revisions to the developer. They actually believe they have gotten the revisions made, and they got that sent back to us late today. But in full transparency, neither Jay nor I have had a chance to go through them, and our understanding is Don Good on the applicant side also hasn't had a chance to go through them in complete detail. So it's anticipated those final edits will be fully made, but we haven't been able to verify them just yet. In terms of construction plans, we do have construction plans submitted. They do show how the developer plans to comply with the ordinance requirements on the private roads. And then we separately have a full set of plans on the county road that's already under construction, showing compliance with county standards. Next, there's some general standards just for design. Those all appear to be met in the ordinance. Character of the land is 703.02, and there don't seem to be any issues that would cause concern under that. 703.03, preservation of natural features and amenities. There are no significant trees or natural features or irreplaceable assets on this acreage, so there's no concern there. 04 is subdivision name. We have checked with the county recorder, and unsurprisingly, there's no other subdivision named Banderas Point. 05 is monuments and markers, so there's no issue with this section. We have made sure the surveyor is aware that if the subdivision is approved, they do have to set monuments and markers per the ordinance after final grading, and they have no issue with doing that. In terms of 06, there are several points regarding sewer. Todd Corey, as noted, has reviewed this, and then water, which is the next point, and they have no issues. In terms of C, that regards fire hydrants, Kevin with Frankfurt Fire has come and reviewed these. He has no issue with the locations of the hydrants, nor the access widths, the turnarounds, or the water locations relative to his area of expertise. Finally, in D, all other utilities. So Tipmont Electric, which is the electric supplier there, they have looked at the plans. They did ask for a adjustment to what's called a shift gear placement. I'm in a little over my head there, but I did check with the surveyor and who's doing this project, and he said that is not an issue. They can get that adjustment made. So we anticipate there's not going to be issues with Tipmont. In terms of Duke Energy, as of the time of writing this, they were reviewing the required pedestrian connectivity around and under their high-powered transmission lines. When I wrote this, we were awaiting a final response. They actually called me just before the meeting, and they let me know that they will be able to allow pedestrian connectivity. They don't want a whole bunch of tall trees and shrubs, but they need to work with the developer and believe they can do that in the next week or so to make sure. They need a certain distance from their main power pole to make sure if there's an issue with that pole, they can get to it, but there's no problem with the pedestrian path going to the eastern property line. So that will be able to be arranged. The applicant doesn't see an issue with that. We've just got to get the plan adjusted. 0.07 is public use or open spaces. So in this case, because we've already been through a hearing with the PUD, there's a large amount of common open space. The plat does match the PUD in terms of what that open space is and its dedication, and the covenants do detail maintenance provisions for those areas, so no concerns. 08 is blocks, and this is just plain not applicable to this subdivision and its design and size. 0.09 is lot design. So most of the standards in this section are either not applicable or they're met. Each lot on the primary plat does need at least 50 foot of frontage on a street that's either publicly or privately maintained. And that is met. All four lots do meet that. So There is a note that I want to make, this is different than subdivisions we've seen in the past. So because this is a commercial subdivision, and I want to make sure the Plan Commission is aware of this so it doesn't create a surprise down the road, the applicant is not allowed to change street locations or public facilities. So what you hear and you approve or disapprove is binding on them in terms of like the pond, the sidewalks, the streets, which is not a lot of here, but those kinds of things on their secondary plat, unless they come back to you. But they are allowed to add lots and adjust lot lines within each phase to meet the needs of the final users that may be purchasing or dividing to go in those areas. So there may be, is permitted to be, some adjustment during secondary platting, and it is anticipated that phases 3 and 4, which on the PUD would be the RV campground and the commercial and hotel and brewery areas, it is anticipated that those will have some such adjustments when they get to the secondary platting and further configuration. And if they have to add or change roads or public facilities on those, then they will have to come back to the Plan Commission having jurisdiction to discuss that at that secondary. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear because it's very different than what we normally do. And if you see this down the road, I don't want you to be surprised if one of these phases has some additional lots that weren't shown at this stage in the game. In the case of irregular lots, this subdivision does have some, but the parent tract is irregular, and lots are designed to allow recreational development centered around the pond, which is also irregular. So even though the ordinance encourages rectangular, regular lots, staff would view this particular pattern of irregular lots to be more appropriate to and more desirable for the site conditions unique to this particular situation. But I did note that if the Plan Commission disagrees with staff's feeling, there is a standard here that encourages regular lots unless unique circumstance makes an irregular lot most appropriate. In the case of the water body, the covenants do detail the ownership and responsibility to avoid it becoming a county responsibility, so no concerns there. 703.10 is lot access. It involves how driveways are built, and this plat does comply with the applicable standards in this section. There are some standards that are just not applicable given the way the subdivision is designed. 703.11 is the requirements for private and public streets. So parts of this are not applicable because they are regarding residential subdivisions. Other parts are clearly met. There's a few items of note, mainly that there are required turnarounds, and the plat does show a privately maintained cul-de-sac at the end of the road the county is constructing. That cul-de-sac does meet the size requirements of section P9, and a basic construction plan has been submitted showing that the plans comply with the standards for street design. And of course, when it's built, it will be inspected to verify it is built that way. In terms of the county road on the plat, that's already constructed, leading into the development to county standards. 703.12 is sidewalks. There are sidewalk designs included in this plat, as well as other pedestrian connectivity as required in the commitments on the planned unit development. But sidewalks do appear to be missing along parts of Phase 1 and State Road 28 when we wrote the staff report. But I wanted to note they are shown, and now actually on one of the development plans, the concerns are fully addressed in the case of Phase 1 and down to the event center. That just needs to be carried across all the way. And then we think we've got this worked out with Duke in terms of State Road 28. It's just got to be followed through. So staff doesn't anticipate this is going to be a significant holdup. It's just some design adjustments that still need to be made. Additionally, there's a separate issue with the pedestrian connectivity. The developer would like to be able to use an alternative hard surface for some of the pedestrian walkways, including the ones along State Road 28. And from staff's perspective, as long as it is some sort of hard surface that's ADA accessible, staff would not have any objection to that. Unfortunately, just with the timing of when this was filed and the review process and the modifications as we've gone along, a modification was not advertised ahead of time. So there is no way that the Plan Commission can hear and grant a modification that hasn't been advertised, even though staff would not have an issue with it. And so I'm going to briefly segue from this to let you know, and I'll come back to this at the end. The applicant has submitted a follow-up request for this modification and another one that will be mentioned later in the staff report. And we have advertised that, and as you know, because we emailed out to check quorums for a special meeting to discuss those modifications on the 20th of February at 11:30. And I'll come back to that, but just want to make you aware that this is one of those two modifications. And it has at this point been sent to the paper. So the next item is point 13, curbs and gutters. This is the second modification need. Curbs and gutters are required, but this case is unique because the entry road was built by the county and designed for sheet drainage because there's no storm sewer. Plan staff have had communication with both county and city leadership since this is about to be annexed, and there is no issue with either jurisdiction in allowing this to remain curb and gutter free. The developer separately obtained a variance to allow their internal drives in the livestock areas to be curb and gutter free. And then they made some design features that work with their privately maintained small area there on the cul-de-sac. So this is another area where staff has no objection to a modification, and it's been requested and is being advertised for the 20th, but we can't hear it until notice goes out. That moves us to 703.14 street signs. This section, the standards appear to be met with no issue, and the street sign design also matches the planned unit development, which has a signage plan. 0.15 is culverts. There are a few culverts that are going under the county installed section of the road. Those are being installed by the county and are being built to county standards. 0.16 is ditches. Same thing, those are being installed by the county and built to county standards, so no concerns. 0.17 is streetlights. There's one streetlight in the construction plan, but it was a little unclear and difficult to see on the plat. There's no objection from the applicant, but they need to have one according to the ordinance at each area where a private road and a public road meet, and then driveway intersections. And they were getting that taken care of on the plan, so we don't anticipate that being a holdup. 703.18 involves easements. So there are a number of easements, some pre-existing for the water tower and the cell tower, some utility items, some are new, such as a future road right-of-way to allow for development of land that is further to the east. And they are shown on the plat. The one challenge that we were kind of having is the labeling on the plat and the labeling in the covenants on the first draft didn't clearly match and define. We believe that's been addressed, but since we haven't had a chance to go through the covenants entirely on the revised plat, we can't absolutely assure the Plan Commission of that just yet. But we do anticipate it will be resolved without issue. 703.19, stormwater drainage. Drainage plans were submitted with the plat. They meet the Clinton County Drainage Ordinance and have been approved by the Drainage Board. No concerns in this section. 0.20 is erosion control. Again, plans have been submitted with the plat. They do apply during construction, and all standards appear to be complied with. 0.21 is site preparation standards. This actually applies during construction, not at platting. The plans all do seem to comply in as much as it's applicable, and so there's no concerns. 703.22 is floodplains and areas of poor drainage. There's no floodplain on the plat. There are several wetlands, but they are non-jurisdictional, and the developer has submitted paperwork from IDEM agreeing that they are non-jurisdictional, so there's no concerns there. The Drainage Board has actually approved a plan that preserves a significant amount of the wetland area and pond as common area at the center of the development. So standards of the section are met. So that leads us to recommendation. Consequently, staff's recommendation would be to continue the application of this major subdivision to February 20th of 2024 at 11:30 a.m., which is when the two modifications have been advertised to be heard. State law is pretty clear in the overall sense that if a subdivision meets the standards, it must be approved. It's not discretionary. But if it fails to meet the standards, it must be denied. Those two needed modifications with staff supports discussing will be advertised in the paper on February 7th, which is actually tomorrow, to be heard on February 20th, should the Plan Commission be willing to continue the application. I've listed the two modifications. One is to allow alternate sidewalk services, and the other is to waive the curb and gutter requirement. And then I would note that if those modifications are granted, and assuming, and we have no reason to assume otherwise, the developer has completed the other minor items ahead of the 20th, then the primary plat would meet all standards and per state law must be approved by the Plan Commission. And I apologize for the length of that, but there is a lot, that kind of went through in that review, and I wanted to be thorough. But that would be staff's recommendation, is to allow the developer, and they also are aware and have submitted a request for the modification, so it's not a surprise to them.
Thank you. Would anyone from the Good Oil team like to speak?
Just real quick, Wyatt Good with Good Oil, and I just wanted to thank everybody for the time that you guys have put into this. I know Liz has pretty much lived this for the last 2 months going through it, and I know you guys have sat through several meetings with us, and like I said, I just speak for the family when we say we appreciate everything and all the time that you guys have put into this for us.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Steve Alexander with Prince Alexander Architects. We're the designer of the master plan for this commercial subdivision, and we've really tried to incorporate as many exciting things that we can figure that would fit on this piece of property to promote economic development with all the money that the county has invested out there. And Good Oil family has been very proactive in working with Liz and the planning staff to develop this plan. I think we've really put a lot of time and thought into it to make it work for everybody and comply with everything. So we respectfully request your approval at that time.
Thank you, Steve.
I promise I'm the last one. Ben Hull with Landworks Engineering, and I'm the engineer that helped prepare a lot of the documents that you see today, and then been working with Liz pretty much nonstop over the past few weeks. So open to any questions that you might have. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else here that would like to speak? And Sheridan.
Thank you. Shan Sheridan with Clinton County Economic Development and the Chamber of Commerce. I just want to simply say we do appreciate the Good family and your investment in our community. Thank you very much. This is something we've been looking forward to. I did I-65 and 28 for many years. It took a long time to get the water, sewer. Thank you, County, for being proactive on that. Now the partnership with the City of Frankfort is just truly, truly a blessing to see. This is going to be a game changer for Clinton County and for our region, as we saw at our Ready grant meeting the other day with the state. So thank you for your consideration. We greatly appreciate your cooperation and collaboration in economic development. We think this is really exciting for not only Clinton County, but for the state of Indiana. So thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, I'll open it up to board discussion, thoughts. Anybody have anything?
I got one question, and I don't know. I mean, you've got the plat up there. Where does the access road go into this? Does that just start right south of that, or right north of the pond there?
Yeah, so the access road, on one end is a cul-de-sac that meets the commercial size for trucks and semis to be able to turn around, and it's right
Sure.
there next to the pond, on the west side. And then the county road then goes forward to where it will meet what is, the to be constructed, but I believe bid out, roundabout that will sit there and ultimately allow access for the realigned, I think it's 800.
Yep.
That comes down from Mulberry. So, and then we'll be eliminating all those extra drives and curb cuts that currently cause so much chaos, when you're trying to pull in and out. So everything kind of comes in centrally. Did that address? And then once you get to that cul-de-sac, everything behind that will be private drives, not actual public roads.
What about the right of way that they were talking about for going east?
Yeah, so if you
Is that
look
in
on the
front of
plat-
is that right in front, like the turn to that would be going along that pond and heading
Yeah, do you
east
see
there?
on the plat
Where
the
there used to
little-
be an old property line, correct? Kind of?
I think the property line is actually further
Further
north.
north,
But if you
okay,
look at that
yeah.
plat, there's a little notch that kind of
That's
sticks
what
out
I-
in
yeah,
the right of
okay.
way, and
That's-
just north of that, there's a kind of a pipe stem, and that's actually the start of that
Okay,
area, and then it continues all the way to the property line.
okay, that's all I wanted. That's important. I mean,
It is.
we get these developments, start stacking them on top of each other, and we don't want the same thing that you drive through Fishers on 37 and nothing's continuous, and it's really hard to go from one development to the next. That's super important for development for our county and making it easy to get from one set of development to another. It's super important.
Okay.
Good.
Any other?
I'm good with that.
We have a recommendation from staff. Do we have a motion to follow the recommendation?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we continue this application until the February 20th meeting, at which time the two modifications can be heard.
I'll second that.
Motion by Dan, second by Walt. Roll call, please.
Jordan Brewer,
Yes.
Grant Muller,
Yes.
Dan Sheets,
Yes.
Walt Minnick,
Yes.
Andy Bailey,
Yes.
Jeff Chenoweth,
Yes.
Chad Colby.
Yes.
All right, so that's 7-0 to continue, and I'm gonna, for Jordan, if you don't mind, before we move to the next one, I had a question as a follow-up on that. So we don't have anybody here who's objectors tonight. The state law requires that we have the publication in the newspaper, which is going out tomorrow. It also requires that notice be sent to interested parties, but it leaves the Plan Commission to determine how that notice gets sent. Your board rules say that tomorrow they should send letters by certified mail with return receipt to each of the interested landowners who received notice for this hearing, as well as post another sign. You have the right, by I believe it's unanimous board motion, to waive your rules. And as staff, given that there's no objectors and we're so many meetings in, I would ask respectfully if the board would consider waiving your board rules to state that we can leave the existing subdivision sign up and just go out and change the date, to the 20th, and then that they can send their notice to the interested party by regular mail instead of having to spend the $7 per letter by registered mail, by certified mail return receipt. Since everybody has already received notice of this hearing tonight, no one has come, so the legal required is met, but it simplifies what has to be done for notice for the 20th for the items that are local requirements.
Okay. Board,
I don't see any issue.
anybody have an objection? If not, could we have a motion?
I move we do what Liz said.
I'll restate it for the record. So that motion would be to not require a second sign to be put up and allow staff to modify the date on the existing sign. And then for notice to interested parties to simply be sent by regular mail without requiring certified return receipt.
That's it.
Yeah, Dan was the first, Walt was the second. We'll go roll call, please.
Jordan Brewer,
Yes.
Grant Muller,
Yes.
Dan Sheets,
Yes.
Walt Minnick,
Yes.
Andy Bailey,
Yes.
Jeff Chenoweth,
Yes.
Chad Colby.
Yes.
All right, so we'll make sure to correspond with you guys to make sure you have that letter sent out by regular mail. It'll have to be sent
Yeah, that does.
13 days ahead, but that'll simplify things.
Okay, we'll move on to the next one, which is the application 00040, Good Oil Company, and this is the development plan.
All right, so as Jordan noted, next application, also Good Oil, and this is specifically the development plan for the gas station and convenience store, which this is what's labeled on the plat as Phase 1. It'll also be a lot. And this is going to look super familiar because this development plan was heard almost identically by the Plan Commission before the plan unit development was adopted, when it was still zoned B3. And some initial permits were issued before the PUD based upon that. But after it was rezoned, the rules for the PUD require then that a final development plan within the PUD be adopted before further permitting can occur. So this is coming back to you essentially in the same form with an additional modification that you asked to come to you at this time. So I'll kind of go through some more detail. The parcel itself is the Banderas Point Planned Unit Development. To the north, you have a mix of roadside business and general business. The east and south are the Banderas Point Planned Unit Development. And then to the west, you have some roadside business on the other side of the interstate. So this site, again, this is the southeast quadrant of the I-65 State Road 28 interchange. The site is zoned for Banderas Point as a planned unit development. Development plans allow sites in the West State Road 28 overlay, which this is also in, to be reviewed administratively, but because it's in the PUD, it needs to come to the board. So this is a roughly 10.8 acre site for the gas station and the convenience store located within Banderas Point. And as noted, this is going to look super familiar, but this approval will then allow the remaining permits to be issued in the planned unit development district, which have been held up since the PUD was adopted. On the second page, I just tried to insert a summary picture of the site plan, just giving you an idea there. And then again, you've got a picture from the road, looking back, and you can actually see the convenience store, which their permits were issued before the PUD was adopted, is under construction. They're actually, I would call them substantially complete on that building, but there's still some canopies and some other things we haven't been able to issue permits for that are waiting. So in terms of request analysis, there's a variety of areas to review. And as I normally do, I've tried to highlight issues in yellow to make them stand out. I'll try to go through this quickly. Sewer and water are provided by Clinton County. The C-store is hooked into the system. As noted, the store is nearing completion with the insulation inspection scheduled soon. And the Drainage Board has approved the drainage plan. Soil and Water has completed a review and fully approved the Rule 5 plans. This is in the overlay, as well as having some base ordinances and the planned unit development apply to it. A full review of the standards was redone, even though this was approved in the B3, but we wanted to make sure again that all the standards of the PUD are met and we don't miss anything. The only thing it did not meet before when it was heard was the sidewalks and pedestrian connectivity that the developer was required to do. The Plan Commission punted to this approval because at that point in time, the PUD hadn't been adopted and nobody really knew exactly where the road that the county was constructing was going to be. In terms of the State Road 28 overlay, that review's been completed and no significant issues there. NDOT has approved the work being done to the new road and the roundabout, and NDOT is also giving funding to the tune of $1.5 million to assist in the construction of those improvements, and has approved the existing drive and the drive modifications that are taking place. The road itself will be dedicated as a county road to back behind the southernmost drive for the gas station. And County Highway doesn't have any issue with the proposed curb cuts. As you saw in the plat, there will be a cul-de-sac that will remain a privately maintained, publicly accessible road, and that's how the turnaround will occur at the end of that. Buffer yards are shown on the site plan, as well as State Road 28's required landscaping, and they do meet the requirements. Because the plan unit development waives buffer yard requirements internally, there are none shown on the back of the C-store lot. Lighting, as shown in the plan, is in compliance except for one fixture that's not 3 times its height from the front property line. The applicant obtained a variance from the Board of Zoning Appeals on 5/23 of 23 to allow that fixture to be placed there, and with that variance, the lighting plan is compliant. With regards to parking, meets the standards as proposed. With regards to building-mounted signage, I won't go through the details because we've done it before, but the summary of it is the proposed frontage versus sizing of the signage is compliant with the ordinance. There's 3 smaller signs, one over each door, that do not create a problem. There is some new signage in this development plan request that's been reviewed. This includes the fuel and canopy signage and lighting for the 2 gas canopies in front of the C-stores. And as long as the white areas in those canopies are not illuminated, there are no issues with it, and it complies with the BZA issued variance and conditions from March 16th of 2023. There's also a primary entry sign for the entirety of the planned unit development that's going to sit on the C-store property. That entry sign is substantially similar to the main entry sign design that's been adopted in the planned unit development, and that does allow for some modification of the uniform sign plan for the PUD when they file the updated plan with the jurisdiction and the final development plan, which is what this is. Other than the question on lighting with whether white areas are illuminated or not in the backgrounds, the sign does appear to comply. So with regards to pedestrian connectivity, walking paths have been added along State Road 28 and along the new road as required, and that does meet the commitments of the planned unit development and the Unified Development Ordinances based standards. There is some landscaping that meets the requirements also being installed on the site. There's a list of variances that were needed from the BZA. These are identical to the variances that were obtained before this was approved with the B3 zoning district, and these all relate, almost all relate to the State Road 28 overlay. So I'm not going to read those in full detail. They're there if you have questions about them, but they were all granted, and with them, all of those areas do comply. There are a few remaining minor questions. I didn't see the signage plan for the diesel fueling canopy. I want to be specific with that. I have no concerns whatsoever about the Amoco labeling or the signage on the canopy or the proposed canopy's height. But the BZA, when they granted the lighting variance to allow part of that canopy to be lit, they specified specifically that only the eastern face that faces the county road can be lit, and that was worked out with the observatory. I haven't gotten a plan that lets me clearly confirm that that matches. So I'm waiting on that. And then we were missing the elevations for the C-store that specifically showed the facade and signage, but I would note we did receive those on the previous development plan. They're also on the permit, which is issued and confirmed too, so staff's really not concerned there's something out of line. Just noted we didn't have the document reapplied to us. As noted previously, we need to confirm that the white areas on the canopies and the white backgrounds on the central sign are opaque, so they're not lit at night. And then this has now been answered. Duke's made it clear that the front pedestrian pathway can go to the east property line, but they need to coordinate with the developer on the exact alignment of that. So consequently, on this one, staff would actually recommend approving the development plan, and I realize I just listed some concerns, but all of those items, once they provide information, they're gonna comply with the ordinance. They're not asking for anything that doesn't comply with the ordinance. So, to cover that, we would recommend some conditions. The first one, which we recommend this anytime we have a complicated development plan, just makes it clear that nothing in this development plan or approval should be construed as the Plan Commission waiving a regulation in the zoning ordinance without Board of Zoning Appeals approval. The applicant is expected to meet the ordinance in full, and the applicant is aware of the outstanding questions that they have to make sure they comply with. And does not foresee an issue. They understand they need to come back through the BZA if something shifts, and if applicable, to the Plan Commission. Two, that nothing in the development plan should be construed as the Plan Commission waiving a regulation adopted in the plan unit development, because changing that would require rezoning through the county commissioners, or that the subdivision, once adopted without appropriate revisions. And then that this approval is subject to the subdivision secondary plat for the C-store being completed and recorded. That also has to be done before permitting. And then finally, we now know this is true, but Duke has not forbidden it, so it would be, the final condition would be the pedestrian walkway along State Road 28 does need to go to the east property line so the state can connect to it in the future as development continues to occur. But other than that, staff doesn't have any significant concerns. This is very much what we reviewed and approved before. And the developer hasn't expressed any desire to not comply with the couple outstanding concerns.
Okay. Anyone from Good Oil want to address the three concerns or speak on this development plan at all?
Certainly, yeah, the three concerns that are left are more because I am not a signage or a lighting expert, so I was trying to pull all the data together, but didn't necessarily, in the last couple of days, have the time to go through and make sure that it was addressed to Liz's liking. So I think we can get all of those issues done within the next few days without a problem.
Okay, great. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, I'll open it up to the board.
I have no issues with it.
No,
Either.
all right, I'll entertain a motion.
Well, I would make a motion, I don't know how to quite say it, that the commission would go along with this, compliant that all these 3 points are, go along with the recommendation of the board.
So what Jeff said is he is making a motion to approve the development plan based on staff recommendations.
Exactly.
That's it.
That's what he said.
That was good. That was good.
And to help you out, one thing that's nice is as long as we get these staff reports out at least 2 days before your hearing, you can actually make your motion binding upon the staff report, and that works. So that can help you a lot in this, because you can just say with the conditions as listed in the staff report, and it all works for Jay if it's illegal.
I'll second it.
So we have a motion and a second, and we will go to roll call, please.
Jordan Brewer,
Yes.
Grant Muller,
Yes.
Dan Sheets,
Yes.
Walt Minnick,
Yes,
Andy Bailey,
Yes.
Jeff Chenoweth,
Yes.
and Chad Colby.
Yes.
So that's 7-0. So as we discussed, we can just finish up those final items as long as they comply. And then once the subdivision's approved, the development plan part on the C-store will be taken care of.
Okay, we'll move on to the final application of the evening, which is 00041, petition of Good Oil, and it is the development plan of the agricultural event center at Banderas Point.
I guess I did, but I didn't.
So this is the final application in this group, and this is again another development plan application, but this is specific to the next phase back of development, which would be more commonly known as the event center lot, and this is for orientation with what we discussed on the plat. This is what the cul-de-sac leads into at the end. So again, this site similarly is on the southeast quadrant of I-65 and West State Road 28. It's also part of the Banderas Point PUD, and the land to the north, the east, and the south is all within the Banderas Point PUD. So the only direction that you have different zoning is to the west, on the other side of the interstate. You've got roadside business. Again, for the sake of time, this is similar to the last one. It has to come to the Area Planning Commission because of PUD. It can't be administratively done, even though it is within the State Road 28 overlay. This site is roughly 17.3 acres and is proposed for the construction of an agricultural event center. It also includes the pond and common space area for the entire development and the central entry road for the event center and the entire development. And the reason it's important for me to note that is because the PUD ordinance notes that the developer cannot start any construction on those common areas within a planned unit development until a development plan is on file for those areas. So that's why the line isn't quite clean. So on the second page, I've tried to include just kind of an overview that shows you a site plan for the event center and road, and then it also shows you some elevations looking south and north at the proposed event center building. And then the same picture that you're probably getting sick of, showing it from the road. So in terms of request analysis, this site is requesting development plan approval for an equestrian and agriculturally related event center, as well as the entryway to the development, the common space and the pond area. Again, I've used highlighted issues that are of concern in yellow, and then things that are sort of holdouts that we're trying to deal with in pink that are we're still trying to work out. So first off, again, sewer and water are provided by Clinton County. The event center will hook in to the county utility service, which will feed into Frankfurt Utilities for sewage treatment. The commissioners, again, are okay with the hookup, and no concerns are foreseen there. Again, while they did it on the plat, City of Frankfurt did look at the proposed water lines and sizing and locations and did not have any issue with that plan. The Drainage Board has approved the drainage plan and the proposed pond. Soil and Water has reviewed site. Erosion control plans were included with the subdivision filing that we already talked about. And Rule 5 approval can be obtained before construction begins. The site does fall in State Road 28 overlay. And it's actually interesting because this particular site, the front part of it and part of the parking lot are in the primary tier, which contains the architectural standards, but the rest of it is in the secondary tier, which does not have the higher end architectural standards, but does still have some landscaping and other standards that we have to look at. So in terms of that review, the buildings in the development plan have been confirmed to be in that secondary tier, and their surveyor was very helpful in overlaying that so that we could be 100% sure. So as such, we don't need to worry about detailed architectural standards. They have provided elevations so you can kind of see what's happening, but we don't have to look at repeating features or any of those other things. The structure design as approved will comply. In terms of curb cuts, there's 2 driveways that will come off the private street section of the road and will not need governmental approval specifically. The road extension plan, has been sent for comment, but no significant issues are anticipated because it is coming off, there at the end on the privately maintained section. In terms of buffer yards and other landscaping, at the time of doing the staff report, we were not able to fully verify the planting widths. So the way the ordinance works, there's a variety of widths the developer can pick from, and within those widths, then it defines how much density of planting there has to be. And until we know that exact width, we can't confirm plantings. We have received a revision, but it came late today. And I was very focused on making sure everything was organized for the hearing. And so staff hasn't been able to go through that. We do not anticipate there's going to be a problem. We just need to confirm that. I would note related to that no buffer yards are required along the internal PUD lines to the south and the east. Per the adopted PUD, so we're mainly looking at the screening to the front that relates to the gravel areas and then to what's along I-65. Lighting, as shown on the application, is mostly within compliance, but there are a couple areas where the foot candles are in excess of what's permitted by both the Unified Development Ordinance and the Plan Unit Development. Specifically, that's along I-65 and then around the cell tower parcel and the water tower parcel. They're not over by much. That's being worked on. We think it's going to comply, but the applicant did not have adequate time around focusing on the subdivision and the other development plan to get that final set of revisions to us ahead of the meeting. So we would anticipate getting those. We don't think there's going to be a problem, but we don't have them now. With regards to parking, they need to have one parking space for every 3 seats within the event center. The event center is designed initially to seat about 1,500 people. There's 525 parking spaces provided. The spaces and lots do meet the standards for size within both the UDO and the PUD. Roughly 2% of those spaces, which is 10 spaces exactly, are ADA accessible spaces that are right near the entrance to the event center. A variance was granted by the BZA to allow gravel in the parking and staging areas for livestock, and that gravel does appear to be out of sight of State Road 28 as required, as best we can visualize it. The applicant does understand if that turns out to be partially visible, they may need to add some screening or return to the BZA depending on the situation. And I would note, realize I wasn't entirely clear, the ADA spaces and the central parking lot, those are as required paved. It's the livestock parking and the areas livestock trailers will be traveling that are gravel. So there's no concern with wheelchair accessibility or walkers. In terms of loading spaces, 2 loading spaces are required to be designated. They can't be on the front of the building, and those are shown, 1 on each side. There's also numerous overhead doors around the other 3 sides of this to the back to allow for entrance and exit of livestock and trailers. Pedestrian walkways and sidewalks have been properly included along the perimeter and the road. They will ultimately match the subdivision plat, which I think has to kind of be neatened up a little bit to show the same thing. But they do get you around the perimeter as the subdivision requires, as well as down the road, and then they get to the event center entrance in the parking areas as well, so no concerns. Refuge storage areas and dumpsters will all be entirely within the event facility with overhead doors that allow entry to dump those, so there's no concerning about screening there. There's no special signage in this development plan review, so therefore no signage review. They understand that any future, the PUD allows for a large billboard to advertise events to I-65, so anything like that they'll bring through separately in the future when it's applicable. Kevin with Frankfurt Fire did come and look at the plans. He confirmed the hydrants are all where he needs them on appropriately sized lines. He does need a fire lane designated, 1 on each side of the event center, and he needs signage there to keep it free of parked vehicles. He does not need markings, and it is a gravel area, so there's an allowance in the PUD that if it's a gravel area, we're allowed to waive the marking requirement. The applicant is willing to make those, but they're just not currently designated, and they have to have a hard surface that will support the fire trucks at max weight. So the intent is for Kevin and Ben to work together to get that lined up here in fairly short order. In terms of a general review, there's just a couple extra questions and comments that we still haven't resolved and may in fact be in the revised plans we got today, but we haven't been through them with a fine-tooth comb. The ordinance does require, as does the PUD, that there be an area for loading and unloading of passengers to the event center that doesn't block the other traffic flow coming in and out to create a bottleneck. And then the fire lanes are noted here as above. And then finally, we're still unable to confirm all the setbacks are compliant. We were in the initial staff report, particularly looking at the maintenance building. That setback actually notices on there, it's 10 foot, so it's compliant. Wasn't able to see in a quick look if the event center and the stable had a setback, but we don't anticipate a problem, we're just trying to confirm. So consequently, like the subdivision, staff is recommending to continue this because we can't quite confirm that it does meet all the standards of the zoning ordinance and the PUD as presently filed. But I do want to note that if revisions can be made ahead of the 20th, and staff does believe that they all will be, there's nothing in conversation that seems to be a hard stop, then at that point, the standards would be met and the application could be approved, and staff would recommend approval. And then you've got the same set of conditions as the last one, but summing up that in your approval, you're not inadvertently waiving any BZA required jurisdiction or regulations of the PUD that got accidentally missed in the scale of it, and that this is subject to the subdivision secondary plat being completed and recorded. The only reason we're recommending continuing is just to allow the final things, especially the lighting and the landscaping, to make sure it does comply, so the standards are met.
Okay, thank you. Final time tonight, Good Oil. Do you got anything you'd like to add?
Sure, yeah. And like Liz said, we just kind of ran out of time with kind of going back and forth and some of the interpretations. But I don't see any issues with trying to get those done. And like she said, I think we're probably good on the landscape plan when she gets a good look at it. I think we're probably good on the setbacks when she gets a good look at it. So it's just waiting on the lighting plan and then fixing the fire lane with Kevin. I think we'll be good.
Okay, great. Anyone else? Nope. All right. Board discussion, thoughts?
Is there any rush? Would it convenience you guys if we approved it? Or is it okay if we just wait until the 20th?
I mean, we would always prefer to have it approved. We can't do anything with it either way until the secondary plat, until the primary plat is approved and then the secondary plat is approved. So it probably doesn't make too much of a difference.
Okay. Yeah. Then we'd be good to go.
Any other questions or thoughts?
Not for me.
Do we have a
I would
motion?
say I had a lot, but I wanted to see Clinton's face when I said that. I would recommend that we continue this development plan until the February 20th meeting with the 3 conditions that Liz has listed.
I'll second.
Motion, Grant. Roll call, please.
All right, Jordan Brewer,
Yes.
Grant Muller,
Yes.
Dan Sheets,
Yes.
Walt Minnick,
Yes.
Andy Bailey,
Yes.
Jeff Chenoweth,
Yes.
Chad Colby.
Yes.
All right, so 7-0, this is also continued to the 20th, and I think we all anticipate at that date, there's been nothing beyond what we've already talked about, so we all know what we need to do, and then those modifications to be considered, and then this subsequently would also be able to be finished.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks for coming. Do we have any new business?
Answer is no.
We do not. We've completed our new business. I had hoped to have our new building inspector here to introduce to the board tonight, but he ended up feeling under the weather today. And so hopefully at your next meeting, I'll be able to bring him so that you've got to be able to put a face with a name for your new hire. Other than that, I don't have anything.
Okay, so as we've mentioned a couple times, we'll have a special meeting on February 20th at 11:30 a.m. to have the 2 hearings that we continued. Our next regular scheduled meeting will be March 5th, here 6 p.m. With that, is there any other business from the board?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Yep.